Hi everyone, I'm Hillary Halstead Scott, and I am really excited to welcome Julie Sanford to the Halstead studio today. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Julie is from Studio JSD in Grand Haven, Michigan. So tell us a little bit about your studio.
Well, Studio JSD is it's a jewelry design place, a community. We teach classes and workshops in jewelry fabrication. We bring in visiting artists, and we also have bench rental program. We also have a gallery, so we can sell the work of the artists in the community that work there.
Oh, and it's an amazing location. Grand Haven is incredible. It is such a pretty spot.
It's a fun beach town.
Yeah, it's a great summer retreat location. And you also have some visiting master workshops from time to time as well, right?
Yep, we do. We're having Jerry Louie. He's a Toronto-based diamond setter. He's going to be in town this May. Richard Sally is coming, Michael David Sterling, David Huang is going to be there doing chasing techniques in September, and a gentleman named Chuck Bruce is going to be there doing some stone inlay this fall. So it's a pretty full visiting artist schedule. So we not only serve the local community, but more regional and beyond that with programming at the studio.
Fantastic. And you can find lots of information about Studio JSD online. And today we're going to be exploring some sawing tips, right?
Yes.
Right. So, Julie, you make these amazing pieces. You're wearing a gorgeous necklace right now.
Thank you.
And Julie does such a beautiful job of putting piercing onto back plates. It's a big part of your style and your collection. Is it a favorite technique of yours?
It's one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorite techniques.
Yeah, it's hard to pick,
but
right?
it is hard to pick. But it's one of the favorites, and sometimes it's fun to just put a little surprise piercing in there. So when you're showing a piece to a customer and they see it, they're surprised by it, and it's fun for them to know that it's there and it's kind of a secret behind the piece kind of thing. So I do a lot of piercing that way.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you were a great instructor at piercing. I have been lucky enough to be in Julie's classes, and she is such a good teacher. She is such a treat to work with, so I really encourage you to check out her classes. But sawing can be a little bit intimidating, right? It's one of those things that can be frustrating. You break blades and your lines end up kind of wiggly, so it can be tough to get started.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the setup you need to start sawing, all of the essential tools, and then we'll get into some tips and tricks.
Yes. So first and foremost, the essential tool is the saw frame and the blades. So you definitely need that to get started. But you also need just a nice bench pin that you can support your work on. I've seen people try to, saw right at the edge of the table, and that doesn't work so well.
You also end up with slices in your table.
Yeah, slices in your table. Yep, that's not real helpful. So basically, that's what you need. And then for me, I need lots of eye magnification. Safety glasses are important because saw blades can break and snap, and I've never actually seen a saw blade go into somebody's eye, but I've heard that it happens. Yeah,
they do fly.
So appropriate eyewear is good. But really, sawing is just a really simple way to get into metalsmithing because you don't need a lot of fancy tools for it. Low tech.
That's true. That's true. Let's talk about saw frames for a minute, because there are a lot of saw frames on the market, and you can get an intro saw frame for like $10, and then all of a sudden they go up to $100 or even more. So what's really essential in a saw frame, and what do you need to get started?
Right. Well, a basic saw frame is going to, we should have brought one over here. I don't know if you can grab one of my saws.
We'll grab the basic one. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a basic saw frame, and this is a good intro saw frame, and they all have these 3 thumb screws that you use. Very rarely do I use this saw frame that adjusts the blade, but then you load the frame and you tighten the blade by putting it in this side. And then they can have different throat depths to them. So depending on what you're primarily cutting, if you're cutting larger work, then you need a deeper saw frame so you can get into the material this way and cut to the center. But sometimes a narrow saw frame is nice because it's just easier to maneuver.
More agile,
and you don't have this back weight, throwing off the balance. It's very, a smaller, narrower saw frame is just going to be much easier and more well balanced. But then, the downside is that you can't cut real big pieces with it. So,
right. And one thing I know from when I got started, and I still experience this, my hand gets tired.
Yes.
And especially when you're learning, like your hand muscles aren't used to, just kind of grasping and maneuvering. And I think, especially because you're a little nervous and tense, like these muscles really do get tired. So do you have any tips on how to kind of alleviate that, get used to it?
Yeah, actually you shouldn't be gripping this too hard. And so the strain that I feel in my hands when I do piercing is usually in the hand that I'm like gripping the piece with and holding it steady. It's not in the cutting hand. This is just a really simple, easy motion, and it shouldn't cause you any fatigue in the cutting hand.
So that's right. We just all need to relax.
Relax. Yes. Relax. Go easy. Yeah.
And what other things do you see beginners kind of struggle with?
A lot of times I see, the biggest problems I see and the frustrations come from pushing too hard. So when you're really pushing into the metal, you can feel it catch. Catch a lot. And and you break blades and you twist blades and they break. And so pushing it. So really you just need to be just very slow and steady and just relaxed. And if it's making a lot of noise, that means you're pushing too hard.
You definitely get that.
And it starts to jump, the metal, and it's just really hard to control that way. So pushing it is the biggest thing that I see. And I just tell people to slow down and relax a little bit.
What's the worst that can happen? You break a saw blade. Everybody breaks saw blades. It's okay. No big deal, right?
Yep, don't rush it. And sometimes as an instructor, I kind of have to remind myself that when I demo sawing, don't do it at the same rate that I do it. I have to go really slow and talk about it really slowly, so that when the students that do it for the first time go to their bench, they do it really slow, because I've seen it. If I cut at my own pace because I'm used to it, then I see students that try to just rush through their thing, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, slow down.
Take it slow. That's right. Okay, well, let's talk about saw blades a little bit.
Okay.
And saw blades, we just mentioned they break a lot, right?
Yes.
And there are a lot of choices, and we see these numbers 4/0, 2/0. We say that is 4/0 blades, 2/0 blades, right?
Yes.
And what kind of blades do you recommend? Because there are so many, it gets to be overwhelming.
Right. There are different brands of blades, and some are better than others. Some are more expensive than others. They're tempered better. They'll flex more. But even in an inexpensive pack of saw blades, you can get a lot of use out of it. So I would not shy away from inexpensive if that's what you can afford. And then the size of the saw blade. Typically I use like a size number 4. It's a very small, thin blade, and I can get really precise lines and designs in there. But you can go, and a 4 is fairly small. So the 04 is small, and then 03, 02 are usually the most popular ones.
Okay, that's fantastic. All right, so sometimes those saw blades get stuck, right?
Yes.
So do you use cut lube or beeswax, or do you have any recommendations on?
I use everything. I use cut lube. I use beeswax. There's different manufacturers of those different kind of paraffin-based waxes. And then even the end of a tapered candle, or I have these just odds and end little pieces of candles that are broken off. Those work too. Just regular candle wax.
Work. Yeah. You don't have to get real fancy with all this
No,
stuff,
but
right?
I do like the beeswax because it smells like honey, and
beeswax smells really good.
It's organic. It's nice.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about saw positioning. So if you're sitting there with your bench pen and you're getting started with your saw blade, how do you recommend that people kind of get started into a piece of metal?
Okay. So let me go ahead and start one up for you. So these are tiny blades. What are these? 04s?
These are 4s.
Yeah. So when you first get the saw blades, they are all bound up by the dozen, and they're really, really tight. And it's really hard to get those blades out of there. And sometimes it's frustrating. You try to unwind it, but that doesn't always work. So one easier way to do it, and okay, so here comes my magnification because I can't see the 04 saw blade teeth on there without my optivisor. And one way to get into the saw blades is to grab a plier, and then you find the saw blades and you pull the saw blades out from the center. So let me show you what that looks like. First I have to see the direction of the blade because I don't want to pull it where the teeth all catch. So pull it so it's smooth coming out. And if you grab one from the middle, can get one.
And get a little grip in there, huh?
Yeah, this is the easier way, trust me, even though you just slide them out like that.
That's a great idea.
From the center. So the wire's not catching on them. And then after you pull a few out, it loosens up and then they come out much easier. And then that's how I get it. I don't even try to unwrap the little thin binding wire on there.
And that's smart to just have like a few loose on your bench, so if you break one, you can just grab another and stop.
Yeah. And then with with students too, I'll put a few on their bench so they don't feel bad when they break a blade and they don't feel like they have to come back up and ask for another one. They just know that blades are there and they're made to be used, and they're disposable. So
that's right. Okay, excellent. And how is the proper what is the proper angle to kind of start sawing at? Do you want to be really upright, or do you want to be a little bit tipped forward? What do you recommend?
I start upright. So let me load this into the frame. So I could load it into this new concept frame. This is a great saw frame.
And loading blades takes some practice, right?
Yeah, it does take some practice. If you've got a saw frame like this, I can show you how to load that. So with this one, the blade teeth should be pointed down toward the handle. So there's an angle to the teeth, and they should be angled down toward the handle and out.
I have to pull those blades right up to my eyeball to see them, but they are a little bit slanted.
Yeah, sometimes you have to just kind of feel the little barb and how it catches on your fingers. So with this one, you just load it up this way, and then you just flip the lever to tension it. And whoops, that wasn't even in there. Let me try it one more time.
And it's worth taking your time when you're loading your saw blade. Don't try and rush it. You don't have to be in a hurry. I am not very good at loading saw blades, so sometimes I have to do it several times and keep checking, because it really does save you time in the long run to get it in there properly, because you're less likely to snap a blade.
Yeah. And it should ring a little bit. Yeah. Ping, 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 ping. Yeah. With this saw frame, sometimes these fine little blades, it's a little fussier to get them in because there's a little pin that it has to grip it. So a thicker blade, it's going to grip in there a little bit easier. But yeah, so that's how you load up that one. And then to get it started, and when I'm piercing, I like to tip my bench pin. So when I came in here, the bench pin was this way. I like to pierce with it flat like this rather than at an angle like that. And
it helps with that hand fatigue a little bit too, I think. When you have a flat surface, you can really
and I can hold it on there. I can hold it on there really good. And then when I started, I usually put my thumbnail against the edge like this, and then that guide my blade just right along the edge, like that.
Straight up and down, nice and easy. And it's amazing how that saw blade will really just start to move through the metal when you've kind of got the right position. It just really starts to glide through almost until it gets stuck. Well, and it shouldn't get stuck. So when I was talking about, here, let me get back in there. So this is the way it should sound, and not that. Yeah, that grinding. That grinding is too much, right?
Yeah. Yep. So.
All right. So do you spend quite a bit of time teaching sawing and piercing at Studio JSD?
I teach sawing and piercing in my beginning fabrication classes. And that's just like one of the first things that we learn how to do in the metal. Well, I guess the first thing would be textures on metal, and then we go into the piercing and sawing.
And is that fabrication class on a weekly basis, or how does that work at Studio JSD?
At Studio JSD, we have 5-week sessions. So the students would come for 3 hours once a week for 5 weeks. And then we have a fabrication 1, and then a fabrication 2, and then a fabrication 3.
That's great preparation. I mean, you must be teaching a lot of techniques in that class.
Yeah, it's really all exciting. Technique based. We work through a couple of projects, but just, working through the techniques.
That's great experience for students. Be sure to check out Studio JSD, all of the offerings there. And for people who can't make it to Michigan, Julie, do you teach anywhere else?
I do. I teach. I used to teach and travel a lot more to teach, but now that the studio is, really planted in Michigan, that I'm there a lot. But I do still go to Milwaukee and teach at the Bead and Button Show in Milwaukee, and then I do get invited to private studios every once in a while, and I'll go travel then and do them.
Fantastic. Well, check out Julie's website for all of the offerings at Studio JSD and her class schedule around the country. Julie, thank you so much for being with us. We're so happy
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you here.
me.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yep, thanks.